Assalamu alaikum. This is the course of technical writing and presentation skills, and in this lecture we are going to discuss the topic of presentation skills. The topics which will be covered in this lecture, I have mentioned these topics here in this text box. Now, good communication skills and presentation skills are actually demand of every organization these days. And you can polish this skill, and it's actually not difficult. Like any other skill, it can be mastered through practice. If you feel like you are not a good presenter, or if you feel nervous while thinking of presentation, you should not worry, because you can also master presentation skills. You can also be a good presenter, but practice is the key to success. You should practice a lot, and in this presentation, in this particular lecture, you are going to see what are some of the techniques or strategies that you can adopt to be a good presenter. The strategies or the techniques that we are going to discuss in this particular presentation are not the only ones. Definitely, the most important thing that you need to be a good presenter is to first of all feel that okay, I am ready to present and feel confident. Here we are only going to discuss some of the techniques that are going to be useful, that can prove useful for you when you are presenting in front of a group of individuals, or in front of your class in the university, or presenting anything anywhere. Now we will first see that what are some of the things that are required even before delivering the formal presentation, because obviously you cannot go without preparation. You need some time to prepare it well. Okay, then preparation and planning, what does it include? Now here I have given some essential checklist. You should actually check whether if you are meeting, or if you are covering all these points, it means that now you are ready to deliver the presentation. So first of all, you should be clear about the objective, about the goal of your presentation, about the aim of it. You should know whether you want to inform the audience, you want to persuade the audience, you want to teach them a lesson. What actually is the purpose of your presentation? You should know who your audience is. Are they students? Are they your juniors? Are they your teachers? Are they your colleagues? Who they are. You should know whether the audience is ready to listen to you, whether audience is belonging to some what sort of background do they have. Do they have some background which is quite you should you should also focus on their background, whether they are of the same background, of the same socio-economic status. Do they belong to the same city, or are they from some other rural background? So we need to be very careful, because some people are not so flexible in their thinking. They won't accept your point of view so easily, or they might not be able to understand you so easily. So we need to actually focus that what sort of audience do I have, and you will have to prepare your presentation according to their level. And then you need to obviously be clear about the main points that you want to make. You should not include any irrelevant points that are that might waste your time. And then there is one thing that you should know, that what do you expect from your audience. So you should be clear about it, that you want your audience to learn something from it, to react in an expected way. What do you expect from your audience? Then next point is where will it take place? Is it going to take place in the classroom, in the same classroom where you take your or attend your lectures daily, or you are going to arrange it in some multimedia room, or is it going to take place in the auditorium, or are you going to deliver it in the conference room? What is going to be the venue? Because you actually need to carefully check the venue. Is it a noisy room? Is it a peaceful and calm room? What sort of room is it? Then do you need any equipment? Because for example, you need multimedia for the presentation, and on the day of presentation you come to know that oh my god, it is not available, or oh, projector is not working, or there may be some problem. Apart from the equipment, there can be some other things as well that you might need. For example, duster or board marker, or a dice. A dice is is very important. So you should also know what time of day is it. Whether you are going to give your presentation in the evening, or if you are giving a class presentation, is it the last lecture, or if you are presenting even in the class presentation, if you are presenting in the group, are you the first member of the group or are you the last member of the group? Because while listening to group presentations, generally audience gets bored until it comes the turn of the last member. So you really need to know, and then you need to think that if this is my turn, what strategies do I need to adopt to keep the interest of my audience. Then in relation to what the audience knows or time constraints, what can I eliminate if necessary? We had already discussed it in the point of audience, that if you should know the background, the level and the interests of your audience well. If you know this well, you will be able to manage your content well. Whatever your audience is not interested in, you can just eliminate it, just skip it. And dressing is also very, very important point. You should be dressed very formally. You should not wear heavily embroidered clothes, or you should actually wear some formal and dark and decent colors. You should wear some dress which is wrinkle free. You should be careful about your shoes as well. You should be careful about your nails as well. So, and if you are, so you should also be careful about your hairstyle. So do not have an open hairstyle, because it is going to disturb you during your presentation. This point is especially for girls. Okay, now we will see how to organize data. How can we organize data? In any type of writing or in any type of essay that you might have ever written, you would have been told that there are 3 parts of an essay. Those 3 parts are beginning, middle and end. So same is the case with the presentation. Here we also have a beginning, a middle and an end. So we are going to see the beginning first. Greeting the audience comes first. Obviously, you have to say either Assalamu alaikum or good morning or good afternoon or ladies and gentlemen, whatever you want to say. Greeting is very important. It is the point where you are going to build a rapport with the audience. You actually, rapport is like a sort of relationship that you are going to build with the audience. If you are greeting them, your greeting style, your greeting tone is going to tell them whether you are friendly or not. And then you can get the audience attention by signaling the beginning. It's very important that you should signal the beginning. You should not just start randomly, my topic is this and that. So you should actually you can start with these phrases like let's begin, shall we start, or let's get the ball rolling, or let's get down to business. You can actually start with these phrases. Then it's very important that you should introduce yourself as well, your name, your position and your institute. If you are giving a class presentation, then obviously everybody, the whole class already knows that you are the student of this university, so you don't need to tell. You need to tell your name and roll number clearly. Or if you are giving presentation at any other place instead of your university, you need to introduce yourself, because introduction actually helps us to establish our authority on the subject. You can say, you can actually, so for example, if you tell your audience that I'm a student of eighth semester, or I'm a student of first semester, or I'm a student of fourth semester, it is going to tell the audience that how mature your presentation can be. It is going to give them some idea. If you have some achievement, like for example, you can say I have been the topper, I have got the gold medal in this subject, and so on. So it is actually to establish your authority, and you can use such sentences to begin to introduce yourself. You can say, let me introduce myself, or I'd like to start by introducing myself, or I'm a student at the University of Education. And then this is very important, that you should begin with a joke or an anecdote. Anecdote is a short story or a statement which is made to surprise or provoke to create some sort of interest or curiosity in audience. You have to make the people to listen to you. You have to relax them as well. You have not to keep them tensed. So you have to involve them in some way. So for example, if you are dealing with the topic of learner's psychology or dealing with the topic of motivation, you can quote a very well-known anecdote or story of Albert Einstein. So we can quote that story here. So Albert Einstein was, when he was a kid actually, his mother received a letter from his school. The letter actually said that your child is a dumb and he cannot read. And when Albert Einstein asked his mother that what's written inside this letter, she told that it says that your child is a brilliant mind and the teachers cannot handle him. And it made Albert Einstein very happy. And from that day onward, the mother started to focus on that child. She started to bring books, and she started to she started to devote her time for Albert Einstein. She taught him herself, and the result is what the whole world saw. The whole world today knows who Albert Einstein was. So this particular story shows us that it's very important to motivate a child. It's very important to know the psychology of a child. So in such a way, you can actually begin with any joke or any surprising fact as well. The real purpose is actually to get your audience involved. Then obviously you have to, after telling the story, you can formally say, we are going to talk about the importance of learner psychology, or we are going to talk about the role of learner psychology in a classroom. So you are going to formally introduce your topic here, or you can use these phrases to tell about your topic. I plan to speak about, or today I'm going to talk about, or the subject of my presentation is, and so on. Now you also need to tell why are you going to speak about it. It is like sort of giving rationale of your presentation, that why is your topic important, why should people pay attention to you. So you should tell them that I have chosen to speak about this because learner psychology is neglected these days, or so on. So you actually have to tell about why you have chosen this topic. Now, have you set any limits on the scope of your talk? You have the chance to eliminate certain areas to avoid any confusion or deviation. So you should try to remain very much focused. Whatever is extra, whatever is additional, do not just include it, because it is going to bore the audience, or it may also deviate you or distract your attention as well. And furthermore, it will also protect you from the criticism. So your presentation should only include the most relevant content. Now, have you also estimated the time it will take? Normally, I have seen that when students come for the presentation, they just start speaking. They don't tell that I'm going to take 5 minutes, or my whole group is going to take 20 minutes. Though you are already allotted time by the teachers, still you need to tell that, okay, I'll speak only for 5 minutes, or my talk will last about 15 minutes. You actually need to make it clear, because it makes the audience mentally prepared. Okay, it's very important. I think most of you might have already been doing this, that we need to tell the objectives or purpose of our presentation. We should tell what is the purpose, or the main purpose of an informative speech is to have the audience understand and remember a certain amount of information. So for this, we have to give an overview that this is what we are going to discuss, and plus we also need to tell that what do we expect from the audience. We are going to see an example here. So for example, this lecture is about presentation skills, oral presentation skills. Now the first point, my purpose in doing this presentation is to give, or in delivering this presentation is to give you a solid background on the subject of oral presentation skills, so that in future at this university or anywhere else you can deliver a successful speech in front of a group. This is my general objective. If I have to tell my specific objective, I can say, for example, now if there is one thing that I would like to get across to you today, is that presentation is not difficult. It is not something that you should get afraid. There are only few techniques that you should remember, and you will be a really good presenter. Okay, then you have to announce your outline. You have to break down your speech into many parts. You actually need to tell that my presentation will have 4 parts, or my presentation will have 6 parts, or my presentation is going to have 2 parts. You actually need to prepare the audience mentally that how long it is going to be, by telling them or by announcing your outline. Then in the beginning, you should also announce about the questions and comments. We normally don't do this and normally just start presenting. So we should tell the audience that I would ask you to save your questions for the end. For example, if you want your audience to ask a question in the end, or for example, you may say, you may interrupt me at any moment to ask questions or make comments. So you can actually adopt any style you like, but you should actually prepare, or you should actually give the audience a hint that they are allowed to question. Then make a transition between the introduction and the body. So when you are shifting from your introduction to your body, you should actually make a transition, a switch, that we should know that now you have started a second point, or now you have started the main body. So you should actually make it clear. Now we will see what's actually during the presentation, or what's the middle of the body, or how should you prepare the main content of the presentation. Now, what information should you give in your speech? Now, all information should support your purpose. Remember, do not include any irrelevant information, because time of the audience as well as time of your own self is very, very precious. So include only the points which are very relevant. Then you need to know how much information should you give. Do you need to give extra detail, or do you need to skip some points? Do you need to give example here, or do you need to skip the example here? So you need to be very, very careful about the quantity. Plus you should know how should I sequence, how should I organize my ideas. There can be different types of organizations of the presentation. You can either organize your presentation from general to specific, or in the chronological order. This order is, for example, if you are presenting some topic which is related to the history, for example, movements in education or history of economics. So you are going to tell the history in the chronological order, in the time order, which came first, which came later, and then so on. This particular presentation which I am delivering is organized in the logical order, the order that actually follows. Then in the middle of the body, it's very important that you have to keep the audience attention involved, because you started with a good introduction, you told the story, and then if you are losing the interest in the middle, then it's not going to prove effective. So what you need to do, you need to think of some ways that can keep your audience attention throughout the rest of the speech. And here we are going to see what can be the ways to keep the attention of the audience involved. So you can give some quote, or you can give some statistic, you can tell some story. So for example, talking about learner psychology, or talking about motivation, we can use this quote. This quote is actually by B.F. Skinner. A failure is not always a mistake. The real mistake is stop trying. So you can either use a quote, some statistics, for example, Japan is land of rising sun. You can use anything to keep the interest of the audience. Very important thing here that you need to use words like you, we, and us. It is also called so you are going to use these words to show that you belong to them, you belong to the audience. Or if you are using words like we, us, or our, it will show that you belong to the audience. If you are using words like it will show that you are actually involved in a sort of dialogue with the audience. You can ask the audience something like, for example, how many of you know cooking, or how many of you like biryani, or how many of you enjoy morning walk. Raise your hands if you know something like. So you can actually ask questions. The questions can be direct or rhetorical. Rhetorical questions are those questions, I have explained it here in the end, a question that you ask without expecting it to be answered. A question that you ask without expecting it to be answered. Examples are, for example, have you ever seen this? Or what does that mean? You are just asking a question and then you give the answer yourself. You are actually not, you won't wait for the answer of the audience, but it is going to create an effect of dialogue. It is going to make the audience feel that you are involving them. So you need to be brief and clear. You need to, so one more thing that you need to be very careful about your personality. You should be open. You should not you should have a very friendly and open attitude towards the audience. You should be lively and enthusiastic. You should not present your presentation in a dull or boring or monotone voice. And plus, use a variety of media sources. For example, if you have to present in the class, you can use multimedia, then you can use some newspaper, you can use some activities, you can use some handouts. So you need to use a variety of media. Then you have to you can also to emphasize, you can actually use such sentences like, the most essential element is this, the important thing that you should remember is this. You can stress the verbs as well if you want to. So for example, in this particular sentence, I want to emphasize experimented, and I don't want to emphasize 3 years. So I will say we experimented with a concept over a period of 3 years. I will stress verb with my voice. And sometimes we can also add auxiliaries like we did see a noticeable difference, or I do prefer walking. So these are going to actually emphasize your points. You can use emphasizing as a trick to grab the audience attention. Yes, so now students, if you might have been traveling from Lahore to Islamabad or Lahore to Multan or Johorabad, you might have seen that there are many signposts on the road which are actually signaling where you have to go further. You have to take the right turn or left turn, or you are not allowed to take a turn here, or you are allowed to take a turn there, and there is a dangerous turn next. So you need to tell your audience that now I'm going to move to the second point. Now there is the most important information, the most dangerous thing, or the most critical point here is this. You need to actually signpost where you are. So the people should know where you started and where you finished. It's sort of verbal punctuation. You should pause. You should be loud some places. At some places you should lower your voice. So you should actually need to uh, add some punctuation there. So for example, if there is an exclamation mark, you will have to either make your pitch higher, or you will have to say it in some surprising tone. So you need to actually use verbal punctuation. Now then you should also link your ideas or sections. You can use such phrases like, let's now turn to this section. To be clear and concrete, you can use examples, rephrasing and summaries. And how to be clear and concrete? To be clear and concrete, we can use these phrases. If I have to give an example, I can say, now let's take an example. I can say, let's see this through an example. I can say, if somebody does not understand anything and asks you a question, or you feel that audience did not understand it, you can say, let me rephrase that, or you can say, in other words, or to conclude, you can say, to sum up, or in short, or let me summarize by saying, and so on. There are all these examples. You can pause the video here and see all of these sentences. Now what should you do when you are done with the whole content? What should you do then when you are done with the whole content? Now, after you are done with your main content, then there must be a conclusion. A conclusion should have 4 things at least. Now those 4 parts include a brief reminder of what you try to show in your speech and how you try to do this. It means that you need to sort of rephrase your objective. That we, in today's presentation, we talked about why is it so important to focus on learner psychology, or then there must be a short conclusion, the whole points that you had discussed during the presentation. And in the end, you should also thank your audience for listening to you, because obviously they have been listening to you patiently, happily or unhappily. So you should thank them. In the end, it actually creates a sense of goodwill. It gives a good expression. Then in the end, you should also give invitation to ask questions, make comments, or for an open discussion you can invite. Remember here that when you are inviting for questions, you are saying that I am an expert, I am able to answer any of your questions. So but there are obviously things that you can do when you don't know the answer to a question. We will see that in the next slide, that what can you do when you don't know the answer. But always remember that if you don't know the answer to a question, you should accept that. Plus you should pay very careful, you should pay attention to the question that you somebody is asking from you. You should not feel like that the other person is going to prove me wrong or doing something. So you should take the question only as a question. Don't take it as a criticism. Now we will see, so you can say, I would be happy to answer any question, or if there are any questions, please feel free to ask, or you can say, thank you very much for your attention. If there are any suggestions or comments, you are welcome to share. Now, what if you don't know the answer of the question, or what if the question that has been raised by some member is difficult? Now you can ask the question again. You can you can repeat the question in your own words to see whether you have understood it or not. If you don't know the answer, you can delay it as well. You can ask for time. You can say, can I answer it in the end, or can I answer it to you after the class, or I'll answer it to you later after reading it again. Okay. You can also use this phrase like, I'm glad you asked this question, or that's a good question, point, or remark. Or for example, you can, if somebody is criticizing whatever you said, you can say that I saw it in the book of Fala author. Or you can say that but that's just my point of view, there can be another point of view. So you need to listen to others' point of view very carefully and with an open mind. Now we are going to see this that visuals. What visuals can we use during our presentation? We can either use graphs, charts, maps, photos, drawings, images, models, objects, or PowerPoint slides. We can actually use a lot of media, whatever is actually available to you. And plus, for it is a good idea to give a paper copy or a handout, because many a times students prepare presentation and there is an issue of electricity here, or some technical issue, multimedia cannot work. So it is recommended that you should always have a plan B in the form of handouts and activities with you. Now, why should you use visuals? Obviously, to keep the audience attention, to change focus from oral, from listening to visual, and then to motivate the audience to involve all the senses. When you are showing them something, obviously their sense of sight is also involved. They will be able, not only be able to hear, but they will also be able to watch things, to see things, to feel things. And plus it will also save your time. You can explain many difficult diagrams, concepts with the help of good pictures and diagrams. And plus, when you have to write on the board, obviously you have to turn back towards the audience, which actually sort of creates so it will, for at least it can distract the audience, or maybe they can lose the interest if you are writing on the board for too long. Then if you are preparing PowerPoint slides, or if you are preparing handout, what should be the size, or what should be the fonts, etc. So if you are writing something on Word, it should be A4 size paper, and layout should be pleasant and easy to read. And fonts, normally Arial and Times New Roman fonts are used. You can use capital letters to emphasize, boldface, italics, or these things to actually emphasize whatever is important or noteworthy. The last, rather the second last point of this presentation is body language. It's very important. This next slide actually shows the importance of body language. You can see verbal message, whatever you speak, is only 7% of your communication. The rest of the communication is actually non-verbal communication, which is being through your voice, your volume, pitch, rhythm, etc., and your body movements. So we are going to see what are positive body movements or body language. Now you need to keep eye contact with the audience. It is really very important because, so just imagine that you are talking to somebody and the person is not looking into your eyes. You will really feel neglected, you will feel ignored, or you will feel like I'm not important, or maybe insulted as well. So you actually need to look into the eyes of the audience while you are um, presenting, and not specifically into the eyes of your friends or classmate. You should actually do it. You should look into the eyes of all of your class fellows. Then facial expressions are also very important. A smiling face is really a success. If you are having a smiling face, it will not only refresh you, but it will also refresh your audience. So you can use different expressions like make faces, raise eyebrows, make your face very expressive actually. So if you are making faces, it is obviously going to grab audience attention. See, you remember the show of Mr. Bean? What does he do? He simply makes faces and he grabs the attention of the audience. So you actually have not to be Mr. Bean, but you have to make faces, like you have to grab the attention of the audience by changing your facial expression. The facial expressions should not be flat. Posture is very important. So you should not be leaning forward or leaning backward, or you should not be moving continuously. Some students move to and fro, they move towards right and towards left. So it actually it is not good. But you can actually move in the class. You should not stay at one position. You can definitely move, but this movement should not be like a pendulum. This movement should be composed movement, composed and confident movement. So then gesture, you can use hand movement, head movements to make points clear. You can use pen, pencil, anything. You can shrug your shoulders, hands and arms. So you can use any gestures that you want to use. So for example, if you want to, you are talking about car, and you can actually show it with the with your movement of your hands, which are actually driving the car. So you can actually use any sorts of gestures which are going to be helpful. So use a lively body language. There are some points of negative body language as well. Never lose eye contact, and do not stare or look blankly, or do not move back or forth, sway back or forth, as I said earlier. And then back should not be turned towards the audience, because it will they you will lose the interest if you are turning back. So then do not nervously take your pen like this, or don't do it like this. So it shows your nervousness. And plus, if you are wearing sweaters or bands, do not put your hands in your pockets. It also does not look nice. There is a suggestion that you should hold something in your hand, like you should hold some cards, or hold some pen or board marker, because it will help you to reduce or decrease your confusion or nervousness. The last but not the least points are voice and pronunciation. Correct pronunciation is very important. If you are mispronouncing some word, it is going to cause a communication breakdown. The audience might laugh as well. So, but you should not take it as so you should not get confused or nervous at such a point, but work on your presentation before, or on your pronunciation beforehand. Make sure you know how to correctly pronounce at least the key technical words. In every presentation of this, in every subject, there are key words which you should know in advance, and especially those words which are repeated time and again in your speech. The last thing here is the voice. Voice is highly important. It should have high pitch sometimes it should have low, sometimes there should be pauses, sometimes you should raise your voice. So you should actually try to um, bring variation in your speech, in your voice while you are presenting. It is going to help your audience uh, enjoy your presentation. It will obviously make them enjoy your presentation. So you should obviously you can change your voice to indicate the importance of some point, or to avoid that atmosphere of sounding monotonous. You know, some speeches, some conference speeches, or some general addresses are actually monotonous, and they put audience to sleep as well. So you should not do this in your presentation. Now girls, now students, this is the reference. I have shared it in the Google Classroom as well. So you can go and read some more detail in this particular handout. Thank you very much for your attention. See, I have also thanked you in the end. So you should also thank your audience when you are presenting. Thank you.